Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Apologies that this week's update is a day later than normal. In the UK, yesterday was a public holiday, which was nice for the coronation. So that was all very exciting. An exciting weekend of coronation stuff. Anyway, let's get into it because we've still got 4 days left in the week and lots of things are happening. So first thing to tell you about is an update, a new version of the Microsoft Graph Developer Proxy. So I have spoken about the Developer Proxy previously in previous videos, I think ever since it was first talked about, and then the early releases, and we're now at version 0.7, so it's still preview, it's not a 1.0. It's still preview version, but it really is taking on some additional functionality, some new features, some new stuff, which really round it out and kind of make it something pretty exciting and cool. I'm not going to go through all of the kind of new features because that's what the blog post is for. But the feature set that is here at the moment, you can kind of, it feels like the team there are really listening to community feedback and adding features in response to that, which is nice because these are things that, like you could, I can completely see in a way where some of these requests are coming from. So for instance, being able to exclude specific APIs. So in your URL watch list, being able to include a whole domain, but then specifically exclude little bits of it. Very useful for real world testing, especially with something as complicated as, say, SharePoint, where you've got the client-side stuff, the front-end stuff, as well as the back-end APIs, but they all live under the SharePoint domain. So you kind of want to pick and choose which of those API calls get throttled and which don't, for instance. They've got better configuration, a nicer UI, improved throttling behavior. Again, it's just kind of all fit and finish stuff to make that overall user experience better. It's good. It must be perilously close to a 1.0 by now. I think, it'll be interesting to see whether it's more features now or bugs or just time that means, they're probably quite like living in the preview space, if I'm honest, because obviously once it goes GA, it needs to be supported. You've got to be very careful about breaking changes. So there's that kind of give and get, if you like. Going to a 1.0 would unlock it to lots of enterprises and big organizations that won't use preview products. But at the same time, you've got to move a lot more slowly once you do that. So, I don't know. It'd be interesting to kind of keep an eye on this and see where it's going. It's a very useful tool for developers right now. If you're doing development in this space, in the Microsoft Graph space, then you definitely need to, I think, make sure that you try this out at least, and probably you're going to want to use it. Speaking of which, if you are in the Microsoft Graph space, that brings me very nicely onto the next thing, which is the Microsoft Graph Early Adopter Recognition Program. This is a new idea, a new program that the Microsoft Graph team have brought out. And basically, if you are one of those people who is really into Microsoft Graph and trying out all the new things, you probably listen to a podcast like this to figure out what's new and what's happening, and you want to try it out. You're an early adopter, right? And Microsoft want to reward you and recognize you for being an early adopter, because early adopters really help products. They help with the feedback. They help with just, even if you never feed anything back, by using the API, you are giving Microsoft useful telemetry that they can use internally to understand how people are going to use their APIs. Because until you write an API, until it hits the consumer base, the people that are actually going to use your API, you've only been guessing at what those patterns of usage are going to be like and how people are going to use the API and which API calls they're going to make more than others, where your caching should be, where your performance should be. And so having the telemetry really, really helps them understand things like that, as well as people logging issues, giving feedback, suggestions, evangelizing, and all the rest of it. So Microsoft would like to recognize you if you are an early adopter in this space. They have a specific recognition program. They will award a digital badge. That goes alongside all your other Microsoft certification badges, and it's something that you can publicly share, which is really nice. So they want good quality feedback, and they've got a submission program. Basically, it involves creating a GitHub issue, but there's different places to do that depending on which bit of graph you're looking at and which bit of graph you're involved in. So if this sounds interesting to you, if you are one of these people, if you are an early adopter, then why not get your badge and let others know that's what you do, because actually you're kind of helping the whole program along as well. You're helping Graph preview programs along by bringing more eyeballs to the fact that it exists, that there is an early adopter program, so brilliant. I think that's a really good idea, and I hope it works out really well. Let's go to something else. Let's go to Azure Communication Services now, because it's the start of a new month, and that involves that brings with it a roll-up update, if you like, from the previous month. And throughout April, the Azure Communication Services team have been drip feeding out new releases, new features to their stuff. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's not very, it doesn't make for a very interesting podcast, but just to call out a couple that are interesting. So there's some Teams interop updates. So some things to support the interop between Microsoft Teams and ACS. I think that's kind of interesting. They've now added things like inline image support for chat, lobby management, closed captioning as well. Closed captioning, really interesting, I think. And so, you can kind of see how this all works. There's some other things around direct routing as well, there's a couple of other updates to the calling SDK. Again, it's going to be one of those things. It's kind of like a lot of small features, so it's going to be checking it out, going through the blog post, seeing if any of those features really line up to the things that you've been waiting for or looking for, rather than a big massive release everybody needs to get. I mean, I do think it's worth not drifting too far from the latest version with the Azure Communication Services stuff, because it does change quite frequently. So you don't want to ignore it for years and then find out that you're so many versions behind, you've got lots of breaking changes to deal with. It's probably better if you can stay relatively up to date, but at the same time, like this update here, unless there's something in here that you really need, I'd say is not an absolutely urgent update to go and get unless you want to. Okay, let's talk about something different. And I'm almost going to end on this one, but there's just one more thing at the end I want to tell you about, which is a voucher code, a coupon code you can use for an upcoming conference. So before I do that, though, let's talk about Microsoft Edge. And there's a blog post by Mary Jo Foley, who's now at Directions on Microsoft. This is the Directions on Microsoft blog where Mary Jo now blogs. Mary Jo is writing up the rumored news that, I say rumored, it's been confirmed, but I'm not sure it's been announced. Microsoft are changing how Edge works, specifically how it changes and how it works alongside some of their other products, such as Outlook and Teams, and web links that happen in Outlook and Teams. Basically, if you've got a web link in Outlook and Teams, it's going to open in the Edge browser, regardless of what your default browser is, and regardless of where all your other web links happen. So you might have, obviously Firefox or Chrome or Brave or any another, browser set as your default browser. And up until now, opening links in Outlook and Teams would open them just like they do in any other application, the default HTTP handler in your browser, and we'll open them in that way. Now that is changing, and it's going to open in Edge by default. And we can have a conversation about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I'm just letting you know that it's coming. I think it's coming to Outlook first before it comes to Teams. So we're going to see it happen in Outlook, and then I guess we can kind of judge what we think about it before it comes to Teams. But I think the stated reason that Microsoft have given for making this change is, I don't know if you remember a little while back, I don't know if you saw this, but in Edge now, it's possible to have side-by-side windows open in Edge in the browser, which is kind of, when it came out as a feature, I was kind of scratching my head a little bit and was like, I'm not really sure why this feature exists. Why would we want to do this? Maybe this is the reason we wanted to do that, so that this can happen. Because what Microsoft want to do when you open a web link is open it side by side alongside the email message in Outlook. So you can imagine, you're in Outlook and you click your web link, it's then going to split screen in Edge, and on one side you've got Outlook with your email, where the link was, and on the right hand side you've got the actual link itself. Now, I can kind of see how this might be a good productivity step, because you are seeing the content from the link in the context of the email. I'm not sure that is true for all cases. But I can see kind of where they're coming from and what they're thinking. I think there's going to be implementation challenges. I think it's going to be really slow. So for me, opening anything in Outlook and certainly in Teams in the web browser is not an instant experience. And I have like a decent machine, a decent internet connection, all the rest of it. I'm wired in, like all the things. But still, like Teams and Outlook are big, beefy web clients, web applications, and it doesn't instantly load. If you want a deep link to a message or an email, that's not an instant process. So is there going to be some waiting around when you click on these links to see them in the context? Do you want to see, the thing that you clicked the link on to go and, look at? Do you want to see it in 50% of your available screen estate, or do you want to see it in 100% of your available screen real estate? Don't know. I think it's going to have to depend a little bit on, how this feels and how this works in the real world. So I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about this. Is it an overreach? I think a lot of IT admins will be unhappy about this. It's going to result in lots of support tickets for people because they're not going to notice that the browser has changed. They're not going to notice that they're no longer using, the Firefox or the Chrome, Google Chrome that they were using. What they are going to notice is all their bookmarks have gone. So, there's that. I don't know. I think this is one we're just going to have to suck and see how it goes. It's interesting. It's interesting when they're doing this. It might never come to fruition. That's the other thing. So sometimes Microsoft announce these things, see what the reaction is. And if it's really bad reaction, they'll quietly make it go away again before it actually ever comes out. So we'll see. But I just want to let you know that's happening because if you are an IT administrator, you probably want to check out what's going on here. There are message center updates for both of these things, I believe, at least the Outlook one. There's message center updates for, and they will have rollout dates and stuff on, and it feels like it's being flighted out kind of over time as well. So look out for those message center IDs. They're in the blog post that I've linked to Mary Jo's blog post. Who's got the actual message center ID, so you can go check them out. All right, I think that's almost everything I wanted to tell you about. The only other thing to tell you is that the European SharePoint Azure 365 and Azure conference that is happening in November, you can obviously get tickets for now. I am going to be speaking at that, and I have a code that you can use as well to get 10% off, which is not nothing, right? So I'm going to put the code in the description. I'm just trying to find it now so I can also tell you what it is. So if you, when you get your tickets, if you use the code ESPC23 Teams Dev, all one word, and again, I'll put it in the notes, you can get 10% off registration. So it is an in-person conference. It is happening in Amsterdam at the end of November. Amsterdam is a lovely place. If you are on the edge about whether or not to go to this conference, I would say do it because Amsterdam is lovely. There's an amazing list of speakers. You can go check them out. I'll put a link to the registration site so you can check out all the speakers and all the sessions ahead of time and see if it sounds like your sort of thing. It's going to be good fun, I think. Should be good. All right. I think that's everything from me. I do feel like I've forgotten something, but I think that's just because everything is, this is the Tuesday, not a Monday. Everything is all over the place. Anyway, hope you have a good week, whatever it is you're doing. And I will see you again next time. Oh, that was odd. I will see you again next time.